Hi, I'm Pam and I'm here to talk about retro video games. For today's review, we're going back to the Old West to hunt some bounties. It's Sunset Riders. Sunset Riders was developed by Konami. It was originally released for arcades in 1991, then the Genesis in 92, and finally the Super Nintendo in 93. I played the Genesis version for this review, though I'll also be touching on the Nintendo version a bit. Sunset Riders is a side-scrolling run-and-gun, where you play one of two characters hunting down outlaws. Though the original arcade version has 4 playable characters, on Genesis you can only choose between 2. There's Billy, who likes vegetables, coffee, and justice, and Cormano, who's into beefsteak, milk, and courage. Who says retro games don't have fully fleshed out characters? Cormano has a shotgun, so he's an easy pick for me, while Billy wields revolvers. There are 2 different firing modes. A lets you move and shoot at the same time, while B will make you stand still while shooting for better aiming. You can shoot in multiple directions, including straight up in the air. C will let you jump, while holding a diagonal on the D-pad and pressing C will make you slide. I found this particular control really awkward, pressing the jump button to slide on the ground, so I didn't make use of it a whole lot. While the original arcade game has 8 stages with a boss at the end of each, the Genesis version features 4 stages, each broken into 2 parts. At the end of the first part, you save a damsel in distress, while you fight a boss at the end of the second part. If you get a gold star, which can drop from certain enemies, you also gain access to a bonus stage where you're on horseback and try to catch coins and extra life tokens that are being thrown from the back of a wagon. Since Sunset Riders was originally an arcade game, one of its best features is co-op mode. Co-op mode is a lot of fun. First, there's no friendly fire, which is always a big plus for me. Having twice the firepower also makes the game a bit easier. However, there is one big drawback. 2 players share continues. Whether you choose 3 or 5 continues in the options, they can go by really fast when 2 people are using them. Bosses drop faster in 2-player mode, but there's also a lot of stuff on the screen you have to worry about. The game plays pretty well for the most part. At first I found the movement and controls a bit on the sluggish side, but as I got used to it, that complaint went away. One of the things I enjoyed most was how it made use of different levels in each stage. The stages aren't flat, you can jump onto the second stories of taverns, climb up hills, and traverse rooftops. Enemies have different types of attacks. Some shoot straight at you, some throw fire or dynamite. There's also environmental things to worry about, like charging oxen or falling boulders. The game doesn't seem too difficult because when you lose a life, you continue on from exactly where you were. You also get a good amount of lives and continues. However, I had burned through all but 2 of my lives by the time I got to the last stage and was unable to make it very far because of it. By the end, there are so many enemies and bullets on screen, it starts to feel a bit like a bullet hell shooter. Occasionally deaths feel a little cheap, like when you get hit by a signpost on a moving train, or enemies drop dynamite right at your feet. I also found the second boss quite tough, as his bullets were a very similar color as the background that was rushing by. I played the Super Nintendo version of Sunset Riders before the Genesis one, and though both games play similarly, there's actually quite a lot of differences between them. The Super Nintendo version follows the arcade version more closely. Aside from the extra 4 bosses, the Nintendo version also features levels that take place completely on horseback and a target shooting bonus phase. The level of detail on both the character models and the backgrounds is generally superior on the Super Nintendo. It also features more voice samples. Nintendo also, unsurprisingly, sanitized the game a bit. Some of the more culturally insensitive parts featuring Native American enemies were replaced with generic cowboy enemies, and scantily clad ladies were covered up or outright removed. It's almost like Nintendo has been changing content it considers too racy forever, and it's not a new thing based on the current climate around games. Back to the Genesis version. Though the visuals aren't quite as impressive as those on the Super Nintendo, I do enjoy the variety of environments. For me, the first stage is the most attractive and interesting, with bright colors and a lot of vertical movement. The first two levels have beautiful backgrounds scrolling in the distance, while this attention to detail seems to lessen in the last two levels. Still, I'd say the game looks and sounds pretty good. Overall, Sunset Riders on the Genesis is a good run and gun that's fun to play alone or with a friend, though it's not quite as impressive as the Nintendo version. That's all for now. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.